Now to introduce our speaker for tonight, Dr. Jessica Turner-Skoff. Jessica's doctorate researching plants took her to the heart of Appalachia and the wilds of the Alaskan tundra. Yet it was during this time that she discovered her passion for telling the story of science. As the Morton Arboretum's first science communication leader, Jessica supports the Arboretum's mission and vision to be a leading center of tree expertise. She catalyzes tree champions by creatively making tree science, horticulture, and conservation relevant and accessible to select audiences. Jessica has received several important industry awards, including the Chanticleer Scholarship, Plants, People, Planet's top downloaded scientific paper, and the American Horticultural Society's Emerging Horticulture Profession Award. To continue to build upon her career in the botanical garden world, in 2022, she received her certificate in nonprofit management from Northwestern College School of Management. Currently, she serves as an editorial advisor for the scientific journal Plants, People, Planet, as a member of the board of directors at C2ST. She is also on the advisory council of Seed Your Future, a national movement to improve the public's perception of horticulture. Jessica is an adjunct professor for the Associated Colleges of the Chicago area, teaching economic botany and science communication for broader impacts. After reading that, I'm so glad that Jessica has time to be with us tonight. Wow, that's impressive. At this point, I will turn things over to Jessica to get us started.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you to Jenkins. It's really exciting to be here tonight and to do this presentation about something very near and dear to not just my heart, but around the world. And we're going to dive right on into this. Now, we all know in our hearts that trees are amazing. Being out in nature is incredibly special. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir right now, since you are all using your evening in the middle of a busy week to be here to learn more about trees. So we all know what's in our heart with that. But today I'm hoping that we can walk away and you will have some anecdotes, some stories of the science behind it that validates those feelings. So we're going to jump right into the scientific benefit of trees for livable and sustainable communities. We are currently in the era of humans. In fact, scientists have termed this epoch or geological time period as the Anthropocene. There is no area of the world that is not touched by humans in some way or another. And the most extreme example of this, of course, is the built environment, which a beautiful picture of New York City right there. The built environment is anything that has been humans have created on it. Homes, suburbia, big cities, anything that the landscape has changed drastically. So we're going to talk a little bit about this built environment, especially the fact that our urban centers are getting much, much, much bigger. This is a figure from the UN. And so this is the estimate of how big cities will be getting from 2014 to 2030. The growth rate, you can see down here, green is less than 1%, red is greater than 5%. I will point out to anybody who has some trouble with colors, these are the only two red dots on the map. And the city populations, of course, range from cities from 500,000 all the way to the squares are 10 million or more. So you can see that there is a great migration into cities, and it's estimated that by 2050, 66% of the world's population is projected to be urban. We are going to be in an increasingly urbanized world. Now let's focus on the United States for a second. If you look at what is projected, by 2050, we're going to have 87% of our population living in cities. If we are not planning ahead, if we are not thinking about these cities differently, we're going to be in for a very rough time. To visualize this was a publication from Nowak and Morton in 2010. So by 2020, this was the estimated of counties and what they would look like. So every county in the United States is here. If it's white, it's 0 to 5% urban. If it's red, it's 80 to 100%. So you can see in Philadelphia area, of course, it's very urbanized. Now by 2050, it's going to be significantly more. I'm in the Chicago area, and the Chicago urbanization is basically going to spread all the way across Illinois. So we have this great migration of the cities. We need to be planning ahead, and we need to be thinking about our cities in a different way. At the Morton Arboretum, I'm constantly getting asked because of my job, oh, do you have information to get my HOA to care and plant for trees? What can I give my local policymaker to, provide an argument why we should be thinking about trees in our community, especially since it's such a long-term investment? So Dr. Nicole Cavender, my co-author, and I wrote The Benefits of Trees for Livable and Sustainable Communities. I'm going to be talking a lot about this paper today. This paper was actually the one that won the 2019, the top downloads from Plants, People, Planet. And this article, we really tried to evaluate what trees were doing for people in cities and what can they do. We combed through the literature. We wanted to find the best studies that were out there. We really tried to select studies that removed extraneous variables like socioeconomic variables, demographics, and really to focus on the articles that are doing the best job possible relating trees and the benefits that they provide. And since we are scientists, we always like to build upon the work of others. And luckily, we have a great framework to build upon. If you are not familiar, the UN came up with the UN Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. And these are all an outline of the greatest challenges of our time. And these are agreed upon by an international audience. These range from everything from poverty, reducing poverty, to improving life on land, to increasing gender equality. All of these different goals are the biggest challenges. And, these are what is set up. So this was the framework that we were wanting to build upon. And if you, this has been used before for nature-based solutions, like regarding plants and how we can incorporate plants into improving the world. But our paper was the one that really looked at trees specifically, focusing on kind of a urban and city environment. And what we found was that trees can help us meet 15 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is very impressive. And we are going to be continuing that conversation today because we broke it down into 5 major categories: climate change mitigation and habitat, health and well-being, cognitive development and education, economy and resources, and green infrastructure. For the rest of this talk, I'll be talking about each of these categories and providing some really cool studies that, again, we selected because they were very rigorous and really focused on what trees were doing for humans or the environment. So we'll go through each of these, and I will relate the UN Sustainable Development Goals to each of these categories. First off is climate change mitigation and habitat. Now, we are still building evidence on the amount that trees can help with mitigating climate change through the storing and sequestering of carbon. So that, of course, is that trees can take in carbon and then they store it. So that's store and sequester. Now, there's growing evidence that shows that this could be a really important way to mitigate climate change. Trees ultimately are critical for habitat. In most terrestrial ecosystems, they are the backbone. They are providing habitat for animals, plants, you name it, they're living in trees or using trees in some capacity. In fact, I believe it's in Illinois, oaks can, well over 400 species depend on oak trees. So there's a lot of really valuable things that trees can provide. And this study by Stagall in 2011 looked at parks, and parks that had really large, big trees had far greater biodiversity than the parks that had smaller trees or no trees at all. One of the most compelling things that trees can do for helping mitigating the impacts of climate change is actually reducing the urban heat island effect. Now, the urban heat island effect, that's the idea that, when you are in a city in the summer and you get out of the air conditioning, you step outside and it's just absolutely sweltering. Cities have the tendency to, because of all the built environment, the asphalt, the concrete, they capture heat and they store it. So it can get incredibly hot. Now, this image is from the city of Melbourne, but you can see that in these orange areas here. Well, here, I'll focus on the scale first. Sorry, I am a morning bird. So this is a little bit later for me. So I apologize if I'm tripping over my words at all. So this scale right here, the darker the orange, it's around 61 degrees Celsius. The darker the blue, it's 25 degrees Celsius. So there's a significant range. And if you look at this image, if you are in the shade, it's around 93 degrees Fahrenheit as compared to the orange, which is 141 degrees Fahrenheit. There is a massive difference in what the presence of trees. And it's not just this anecdotal picture. At the Morton Arboretum, we have the Center for Tree Science, and our forest ecologist, Dr. Christine Rollinson, she is incredible, and she did an analysis looking at 94 cities across the globe with 2 million people or more, looking at the impacts that trees have on temperature. So the darker the blue is the greater the decrease of temperature, the darker the brown, that means that trees are actually causing the city to be hotter. And looking at all of these cities across the world, trees have an ecologically and statistically significant impact on the temperature of cities. So the tree effect on temperature can actually be as much as -9 degrees Celsius. It averages about -1.9 degrees. Now this is, there's large standard deviation here, but it is statistically significant. So this is really important too when you think about all of the impacts that a hot city can have, especially on vulnerable populations. We're going to have increases in temperature. Cities are just going to get hotter and hotter and hotter, and that can cause a lot of health and well-being issues for people. We'll talk more about that in the next slide. So trees can help us reach the goals of good health and well-being, climate action, and life on land. What do I mean by health and well-being? I think that's a very important definition. I feel like sometimes those words are just dropped and not elaborated on. Health in this case, mental and physical health, and well-being is how people are not only relating to themselves, but others. That overall health of communities and how connected we are. When we look at major issues that are impacting health and well-being, we don't have to look much further than pollution. Pollution is absolutely terrible. The results are in on that. The jury's in. It is not a good situation. In fact, it can be connected to everything from increased blood pressure to respiratory issues, cardiovascular issues, kidney issues. It can have eye issues, and ultimately death. So if we are thinking about something that could have the biggest impact on human health and well-being, it's removing air pollution. And what do you know? Trees are amazing at that. Not only do they take in air through gaseous exchange through their leaves, but their actual physical presence of the leaves, the bark, the crown, the canopy, all of that pollution sticks to that. And so it's a way to trap it from the air. This study by NOAC in 2018 looked at, carbon monoxide, particulate matter. Particulate matter is the really nasty, teeny tiny pollution that will get in your lungs, stay there, sometimes even get into your bloodstream because it is so small. It is very bad news. Also ozone. And what this study showed was that trees are really good at removing these things. Trees in 86 Canadian cities removed 16,500 tons of air pollution in 2010 alone. So That's an incredible reason for us to be caring about trees. But let's focus on the US a little bit. And this additional study by NOAC looked at, again, the pollutants that are being removed in the metric tons. Again, ozone, particulate matter, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide. And what he found is that urban street trees across the United States remove 711,000 metric tons of pollution a year. That is a significant number that these trees are just passively taking care of for us. Now, if we were to find a way to, remove it ourselves, that would cost people $3.8 billion a year. That's very substantial that trees are just doing that, and we should be treating them as an investment. Get ready, you're going to hear that a lot this presentation. But let's go back to the 711,000 metric tons. That is a really big number, and humans are notoriously very bad with numbers. So just how much is that? Well, if you think about what the biggest animal in the world, that is a male blue whale. That's around 300,000 pounds, which is 186.1 metric tons. So each year, street trees are removing from our airs, just in our cities, every single year, are removing the equivalent of 5,224 whales of pollution. And again, this is incredibly teeny tiny things that you can't see with your naked eye. All compiled, it would be 5,224 whales. Again, though, humans are notoriously bad with numbers, so just imagine each one of those dots being a blue whale of pollution. And that's what trees are doing for us each and every year in our cities. It's amazing, not even including all of the other incredible benefits they provide. This study's awesome. So this is a very important study that was done by Ulrich in 1984. This was incredibly rigorous. He looked at people who had gallbladder surgery in a hospital, and he controlled for a tremendous amount of variables, even down to room color. It's very rigorous. And so he had patients that were overlooking trees, and then patients that were overlooking a brick wall. So if you're in the hospital, request a view of trees, because not only did the patients that had view of trees have shorter stays, but they required less heavy-duty painkillers, and they actually had fewer negative notes from the nurses because they were healing faster, they were being released sooner, they were in better moods. So it's absolutely incredible. So if we think about our health system, we need to be incorporating environmental influences, nature, trees, because it has a really significant impact. Regardless of how you view, there's a lot of theories about why trees matter to humans, why nature matters. But bottom line, it is coded in our whatever. We need to be around nature. If you actually look at COVID cases, there is a link between COVID cases and greenness. So this is an example from Chicago. The NDVI, you can just think of that as greenness. And the yellower color, that means less green. The darker the green, that means more green. Same with the cases per 100,000. The lighter the color, the less COVID cases. The darker the purple, the more cases. And there is a direct link between greenness and COVID cases. And you got to think about it, but you've got respiratory issues. You have, if trees aren't removing pollution from communities in these areas, that can be a huge link. So that is, and we'll come back to this study in a little bit. This was a cool study that it was a longitudinal study. So it looked at the same people over a really long period of time. And women that lived in higher levels of greenness, again, controlling for all these extra variables, had a 12% lower rate of non-accidental mortality. And this was less of having respiratory disease, kidney disease, and even cancer. That is a significant percentage. I play the Powerball, and I do not have a 12% chance. So why are we not thinking about that in our cities as a way to help increase people's lifespans and quality of life. Now, they always say never let a good crisis go to waste. So here I am talking about all the great things that trees are doing for health and well-being. But what happens if you take away all those trees? So let's talk a little bit about the emerald ash borer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, so just a brief recap, excuse me. The emerald ash borer is an invasive species that came in, and ash trees used to be one of the most commonly planted street trees. It was very much not, it was not uncommon to drive through a city and just have streets just lined with ash. They're beautiful. It looks great. The emerald ash borer came, decimated it. So I know, I think in Chicago it was projected for a while that we lost 13 million ash trees. This is a picture of the same street, and this is the same time of year. You can see these beautiful full canopy trees out here in the back, but look at all of that death. So what happens then if you lose all these trees? Again, this is correlative, but it's really, really interesting, this research. And I think it really can help us ask new questions as well. And again, this research controlled for a lot of extra variables like socioeconomic and everything like that. But with the loss of ash species, there was an association that communities actually see an increase in mortality. You could trace people dying sooner with the trees being lost. So not only was there an increase in mortality, there was actually an increase in crime as well. That's an increase in property crime and an increase in violent crimes. Now, there's a lot of theories about, okay, why would crime be increasing? There's a couple major theories. One is the cues to care. If you have a really beautiful street and then all of a sudden you get trees that are broken and not being cared for, people are going to be like, no one's paying attention to this street. I can do whatever I want, and then nefarious acts take place. The other is that there's been a ton of research, especially with government housing, which is really, because people are randomly assigned, they don't have control of their landscaping as replication. And they found in government housing that there's actually, if you have a green view from your window, there's far greater reduction in violence in that household, sometimes even up to 25%. So when we're thinking about our landscape and we're thinking about how we're designing our cities, if we want to have healthy, happy people that are, really interconnected, this thinking about trees is a huge component of that. So it improves your mental and physical health, as well as reducing crime and violence. This study was done in a park in Chicago in 1997, parks in Chicago, excuse me. And what they found is that parks that have big trees, this is something that I bet if I asked you, you'd be like, well, yeah, no duh, this makes sense. Parks that had big trees were far more likely to have more people in that park, more interactions within that park of people interacting together, and a greater diversity of ages within that park, which, absolutely, that makes sense. You wouldn't want to hang out in a park without any trees. So it's something that really can improve community ties. And there's trickle-down benefits as well of having multi-generational relationships within the park, because I know kids, if they are left to their own devices, they will get into trouble. And so this type of community tie improvement can actually have increased adult supervision. So there's a lot of other benefits that can be studied in the future, but it's really interesting, the work that's out there. Trees can trees can help us meet the goals of good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities, and finally, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Trees are good for cognitive development and education. This is one of my favorite components of this research. It's fascinating. So this study was done in 2010, and they looked at about 100 high schools across Michigan. They evaluated the views that these schools had from both their cafeteria and the classrooms, and classified them from a built view to a more natural view. Again, controlling for all these other variables, they found that students that had natural views had increased test scores, increased graduation rates, more likely to go to a four-year college, less criminal behavior in the school. It's amazing. They also looked at, okay, so, is it trees or is it, something else? What if it's just grass? If they had a view of just a plain field, like a soccer field, it was actually detrimental. So having that natural view, incorporating trees can be really important. This was a clever study looking at kids. So they looked at kids with ADHD, ADD, and basically they used each kid as their own control. And they would take the kids before they gave them a concentration test, I believe. They would take them and walk them through a natural area, walk them through a community, and then a downtown area. And what they found is that kids were much more likely to be able to concentrate if they had been exposed to trees. So, this is something that I've got a very hyper little boy myself, and this is something I think about all the time. So that's my excuse for buying a million house plants. And like, he needs green, he needs tree-like things. So when you think about the trickle effects of having a quality education, that can make such a difference to society. So if we are investing in our people and our kids, we should be investing in the environment that they are in as well. Something that I think in the United States we don't always think about is resource security. Trees can be an incredibly valuable source of food, medicine, timber, firewood. This is something that I think people in the United States are kind of a little more disassociated with. But this is something that if we are doing it correctly, it's doing appropriately, sustainably, this can be a huge benefit, especially when you think about food deserts. Planting an orchard, it's all about planting the right tree in the right place and giving it the right care. But this could be a really important solution to help people in our cities. This study looked at the legacy effects of the Berlin Wall. And what they found to this day, there are more fruit trees on the east side of the wall because there was less economic security. People depended on those trees for food. And so you can actually, they took care of those trees. They planted more of them. So that's another thing that we can start thinking about. And if you can hear my children, I'm sorry, I can hear them very loudly right now. So another thing that they can do is economic benefits and ecosystem services. So ecosystem services are, ecosystem services are what nature provides for us that we don't have to pay for. That's everything from cleaning our water, managing our stormwater, creating oxygen, all of those great things. But trees also provide a tremendous amount of economic benefits. A well-planted tree can actually reduce your heating and cooling costs depending on where it's planted. Trees can, they can increase the rent of an area because they look attractive. Wolf did a great study where they looked at how people viewed shopping areas. And the rating went up incredible for if there were trees in amenity and comfort, maintenance and upkeep, merchant interaction, and quality of products. So this is a great way to keep the economy going, is actually by planting trees. People are going to say that even the merchant was nicer if there is a green view. For every dollar that is invested by a city, and this was looking at 5 major cities, every dollar that was invested, there was actually up to $3 return on investment. And that's from stormwater management, purifying the air. So it's incredible. We should be prioritizing taking care of trees, treating them as an investment in the future, because they, like any investment, if you're not taking care of it, it can actually deteriorate in value. But trees are an asset and they should be treated as such. Trees can provide a tremendous amount of benefits that can help us reach these 6 goals. Trees can be incredibly helpful with green infrastructure. That's managing stormwater, reducing pollution. This is a very important contribution that they can provide. But it must be connected with gray infrastructure. We need to be thinking about our cities, making sure there's space for trees to be planted, how they can grow, and then having this coupled benefit will be huge. Now, there's a lot of important considerations regarding this research. As a scientist, I would be amiss if I didn't cover these things. So first of all, there are methodological considerations. We need more longitudinal studies, which is following people over time. We need more experimental studies. We need to have more social scientists working with ecologists, coming together to analyze these questions and really be very rigorous in how we approach it. However, the number of studies that are out there, I think this paper we cite 170 something, the number of studies that are out there are incredibly compelling that there is a link. There's spatial and temporal differences. A tree in Philly in the summertime is going to have different benefits than that same tree in winter. Or even in the tropics, there's going to be a huge shift depending on where that tree is and what time of year it is. There's within and between species differences. If you're planting an apple tree, that's going to provide different benefits than if you're planting a spruce tree. So it's being really cognizant of what you're trying to accomplish in that area. At the Morton Arboretum, we're all about planting the right tree in the right place and giving it the right care. There's also within species differences, and we'll talk more about that in a couple slides. Trees can provide some disservices. This include people can consider them messy, that sort of thing. But the research that I saw out there is that any disservices, people are so happy about the benefits that it always outweighs the disservices. In xeric or dry environments, these might be areas where trees are needed the most, but they might not be the right place for them to grow, or you might have the appropriate great infrastructure set up for those trees to thrive. And finally, I am an advocate for trees. I am a tree champion. I will sing their praises till the end of my days, but it's not necessarily just trees. It could be other types of nature that could provide these benefits. But really, in a space compact city, trees are a lot like nature skyscrapers. They're vertical. You get a big bang for your buck with that regards, because they don't have a huge footprint, but they can really provide a lot of benefits in that smaller space. But it's not just about planting trees. I always love when I see, oh, we planted 1 million trees. That's great. That's wonderful. Let's plant trees. But are we planting the right tree in the right place and giving it the right care? Because if we're not, we're wasting our resources. We're wasting our time. We're wasting our money. We need to be very conscientious with what we're doing, because again, trees, you're planting them and it can live for 100,000 years, depending on the tree species. So, really making sure it's set up for success. And I know one thing, at least in Chicago, the first thing that's usually cut from a budget is tree care or tree planting. And trees are very much an investment in a community. It is extremely easy to identify disenfranchised communities through aerial photographs and looking at tree canopy. And this is a phenomenon seen everywhere. And that's because trees are really considered a nice to have, not a necessity. So as we're thinking about our cities, if we want to improve the lives of everybody, we need to increase that access to green space and trees because of the benefits that it provides for education, the benefits that it provides for people being calm and feeling happy. Think of what the world would be like if we treated trees as an investment. Now back to this paper with COVID, greenness, and inequality. This is something that we see. So back to Chicago, if you look at the areas of Chicago that have the lowest green level and the highest amount of COVID, these are also the places that are a majority of people of color live in these communities. They're most likely the underserved communities. So lower greenness is impacting people of color more in Chicago, as well as increase in COVID cases. So, being really cognizant of the fact we need to be making sure everybody has this access to nature. Because think about what the future will be like as we get cities that are becoming bigger and bigger. Now, this is from India, which I believe India just took China's spot for the highest population. If we're not planning for our cities to be cities of the future, we're going to be really doing a disservice again to the people that live in these communities. I think it's safe to say that this place could look a lot different if it had more than the, I don't know, like 15, 20 trees that I see here. So trees are an investment in a community, they're an investment in the future, and they can help us meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now back to the within species differences. Bigger trees provide more benefits, absolutely. Trees have in an inner city, 50% survival in the first 5 years. So again, was that tree planted in the right place? Was it being taken care of? It can have a half-life of 10 to 15 years. And again, trees can live for centuries. So that is not good enough. I'm sorry, it's just straight up not good enough. Now, this tree is a tree that I would pass taking my kids to daycare, going to the train station to go into work. This is a tree, this is an oak tree, and I will be absolutely honest, it is no longer there, if you can believe it. But they treat these trees as almost like annuals in this plot. And if you look at it, it makes sense. There's standing water, there's an electrical outlet, there's litter in the branches. It's clearly not doing well. Also it's exposed to a lot of salt. And salt can be a very good thing, absolutely, if it's applied appropriately and correctly, but most places do not do that. And I will say that this area, it did not get applied correctly. And this is an oak tree. It needs to be able to spread its roots. It is not having that opportunity. So this is a tree that is not going to succeed, and it did not succeed, and it was a waste of time, money, energy, resources. But you can grow trees in the city, absolutely. So this is another area that I walk through going to the train station. And I want to point out that this is only 0.2 miles away. Caring for the trees, that they have a very active HOA. They make sure that they are cared for. I see arborists there. It's all about where we're spending our money and how we're treating those communities. And we want our trees to even be bigger than that. We want them to get as big as possible. Now, this is very much an extreme example. This is a Dawn redwood in Portland, Oregon, and you can see me down here. So that's the dream, having trees get that big. I know that's not always the case for species, but we really need to be planning to have our urban trees let them age, let them mature. Bigger trees equals more benefits. And when we're thinking about what trees we're planting, we need to make sure we have a diversity of trees so we don't see what happened with the emerald ash borer again. We need to be thinking about what's the diversity of the age structure? Do we only have young trees? Do we only have old trees? No, we need to have replacement trees. We need to have a healthy diversity of age as well as species. So our course of action to maximize the benefits of trees. First of all, if you take away anything today, I hope that you take away, plant the right tree in the right place and give it the right care. This is the way we will have trees that thrive in not only the forests, but in our urban forests, or trees that are found throughout our built environment. We need to help our trees reach maturity. Having them only live 10 to 15 years is inexcusable. We need to be, there's a lot of research out there that shows that if you including community in taking care of their trees, the success rate goes up dramatically. We need to reduce vandalism. We need to make sure when it's a drought, people are watering their trees, because trees ultimately are plants and they need water. We need to be caring for our trees, calling our arborists. There's tremendous benefits for before being forward thinking of our trees. We need to combine green and gray infrastructure in our cities, thinking about nature-based solutions as a solution, and trees should absolutely be considered in city budgets. because trees are an investment and they should be treated as such. Like any investment, if you're not taking care of it, it'll depreciate in value. But as we saw through the literature, trees can provide such a great return on investment. I mean, I think any of us, if every dollar we put in something, we got $3 back, we would be like maxing that out for our contributions. We need to be, and that's just the benefits that are captured from like stormwater management and carbon dioxide removal. That's not even including all the physical and mental wellness that trees can provide. We need to be supporting a new era of horticulture. This is the idea that we need to think about our cities differently, and we need to think about how we're growing our trees and plants in cities differently. So supporting that new era of horticulture will help us have healthy trees in our cities. And finally, be an advocate for trees. You know, at the Morton Arboretum, we're unable to advocate for your trees, depending on where they are. So we need you to go out there and you to be an advocate. And we provide resources. So the Chicago Region Trees Initiative is a program through the Morton Arboretum. We are the main partner. But they provide a great tree advocacy hub. This is brand new. I highly recommend you check it out. But it provides the expertise and tools for you to advocate for trees in your community. It has resources on why you should advocate for trees. It tells you how you can advocate, what type of advocacy is right for you, how community leaders can help, how you can decide who and when to contact, and also frequently ask questions. Because unfortunately, when a tree is usually marked for removal, if it's painted, it's too late. So we need to be preemptive and think about things in the future and how we can protect our trees in our areas. And doing a little research on the Philadelphia community, you guys have a great program, Tree Philly, if you are not familiar. So this is a screenshot from their website, but all about how to get a street tree. Is this a tree emergency? How to get a yard tree? I mean, this is a really cool resource, and I hope that you spend some time checking it out if you're not familiar with it. And also, spotted lanternfly and emerald ash borer. Not good at all. Ultimately, we want our cities to be green, be vibrant, be better for everybody, not just select areas of a city, because we're not going to benefit from that. If we have trees equitably dispersed and accessible for everyone, the trickle-down impact in our society will be astronomical. Because trees are a very important part of the solution and they need to be considered as such. We need to treat them as an investment. We need to be thinking ahead and we need to be incorporating them in our cities of the future, especially as people move into cities at greater and greater rates. So if you enjoyed today, you want to have a little bit of a deeper dive, I was interviewed on the local NPR back in 2019 about this, and you can check that out there. And also the In Defense of Plants podcast. And if you're not familiar with that, Matt Candices is amazing. It's an incredible podcast, a deep dive into all things amazing about plants. You can also visit our website at mortonarb.org. We have the Plant Clinic, which is an incredible resource. We have a team of about 70 Master Gardener volunteers. I think it's around 70 now. And they will answer any question you have about trees, from what is this pest to, what should I plant? Where should I plant this tree? Or what's going wrong with my house plants? They are an incredible resource. It's free, and they help people all over the world. So even though we're in the Chicago area, you're in Philly, they will help you. So definitely check them out. And also the Sterling Morton Library is a great resource as well for any of your plant related questions. So thank you so much, Jenkins. I always love being able to sing the siren song of plants, if you will. And I really hope that we can all walk away from today being able to connect what we feel in our hearts about trees with the science that's out there. And I hope we all have some really cool anecdotes that we can just share all the time at parties, because that's what I do. So thank you very much to the journal. The link to the article is here, and I would love to take questions. Okay, great. I have some questions. Many homeowners in my town are removing healthy, large trees because they are afraid they will fall on their homes, especially in the increasingly strong storms. What do you say to people who are afraid of these trees? All right, this is fantastic. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Having a, I think there's a great art anecdote in David Haskell's book, The Song of Trees. But New York City, when they cut their tree budget, it was far more disastrous, the amount of lawsuits that they had to have, because a properly pruned tree is going to be a stronger tree. It's going to be a healthier tree. So call in the experts. Have somebody look at your tree. That is a huge, very important way to keep the trees in your community healthy. And Amy, I see that you would like to answer.
No, I just popped back on. I was going to
Oh,
help moderate your
oh,
questions.
great, great, great. I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. If anybody else has something to say, please, like, let's have a conversation. It doesn't need to be me talking at you. You've listened to me talk long enough. Okay, can you recommend a reliable source for learning how to fertilize, prune, and otherwise care for trees in an urban neighborhood? Absolutely. I recommend the plant clinic in all honesty, and I can the just Google the plant clinic at the Morton Arboretum. We have a whole suite of resources that we can help you. They're actually putting together toolkits with how you can take care of your trees. They're a fantastic resource, and I use them all of the time.
Great. And I think a good regional, if you are regional, to the person who asked that question, um, Pennsylvania Horticultural Society,
Mm.
also known as PHS. They have wonderful resources, definitely have a little bit more of an urban eye on their things. And Tree Tenders is a great program to check out. I actually went through their training program, their Tree Tenders program myself.
Oh, so
So
cool.
you can personally get trained as individuals, but they have a lot of um, resources, and I can include that in the resources list because, man, Jessica, you gave us some awesome resources to include. I'll be sure to extract all those from the presentation and pop those in on our resources page so you guys have access to all of those links. So
Yes, and that's all can be found in the Benefits of Trees paper, which is open access, so it's freely available, no paywall, because paywalls are the worst. Um, okay, Brazilian pepper trees are invading the Everglades. Do you think it's okay to get rid of invasives? They don't belong here. Oh, absolutely. We need to be really, especially in wild areas, that's a huge component, is we need to be making sure that we're um, taking care of getting rid of invasives, making sure that natives can flourish. In cities, for me, it's a different beast, because it is such a, I hate the term natural because humans are part of nature and I hate that we try to remove ourselves. It's an unnatural environment for trees. And so if we only planted natives, not everything would grow. So especially with the changing climate. So I think that absolutely in the wild, we need to be, and I'm not a pro for invasives at all. Like, we should not be planting invasives in our city. We should not be planting like aggressive trees in our cities. More okay with planting non-natives in our cities just because it's a non-natural area. And with everything changing, we need to have that diversity of species so we can see what actually will be growing in 50 years if things change as dramatically as they're projected to. I know that was a little bit of a tangent, so I hope that was all right. But yes, down with invasives. I hate them.
we feel a similar way. Um, We'll see if anyone else has additional questions. I do have one for you, Jessica.
Okay,
I'm
great.
curious where you might be headed next with research. Are you continuing to look for more, because it looks like that COVID study was pretty recent. Are you looking for
Mhm.
more cases to go along with your current research, or are you looking in different areas?
Yes. So right now, my work at the Arboretum is really a lot more inward. We have with the Center for Tree Science, the Global Tree Conservation Program, our Chicago Region Trees Initiative, So all of these different programs are focusing on either the science of trees or how we can conserve them in both a local or global perspective. And so my work this year is very much just taking what everybody else is doing and then translating it for our staff and audiences. So I will always be adding to my resource list as far as benefits of trees, though, and I'm also, dabbling in climate change communications, so all of those fun things as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering, we noticed that trees can make some cities warmer by a couple of degrees. I was wondering how that works. That is a fantastic question, and that is something that stay tuned, because that's actually we are currently doing some just exploratory research into a deeper dive of that analysis that you saw. So, that's the great thing about science, is we can answer some questions and then that automatically creates new questions. But, trees are statistically significant in their cooling power. And so that is something that I think we can absolutely embrace. Excellent presentation. What is your favorite tree? Oh,
Jerry with the tough questions here at the
oh my
end.
I would have to say my favorite tree. Boy, that is such a toughie, because all my favorite people in life, like, they all have like a tree in my mind that they remind me of, because that's the way my mind works. But I think for me, my favorite right now is, and it's been for a while, the tulip poplar. It is a very stately tree. It is beautiful. It has these incredible like flowers, super, super duper high up. You can't see them until they fall on the ground. They're just gorgeous. And so my doctoral research was on American ginseng, which is a small medicinal plant found throughout the eastern United States. And one of my research studies actually showed that underneath ginseng can grow very well with tulip poplar. So I feel they're very beautiful, and they make me very happy. And their leaves look like tulips too. It's very cute.
I know, they're so fun. All right. Anyone else out there have a question for Jessica? Otherwise, I think that was a great question to end on. Favorite tree? Always a tricky one. Oh, I think someone just popped in there.
Oh, thank you so
They
much.
said thank you.
That's so nice.
And
That's really
yeah,
nice.
and I will echo that. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, for being with our group tonight, and sharing all of the amazing research that you've been able to capture and put together and tell this amazing story. So thank you again for being with us, and everyone who's still out there. I look forward to taking all those awesome resources that Jessica has for us and getting that to you with the recording very soon. So our third Thursday lecture for February is on the 16th, and it is called Birds and Beaks. So we're moving from trees to birds to learn more about their different characteristics, different beak shapes, and what that means. So hopefully you guys can join us next month. Jessica, thank you again.
Thank you. And if anyone has any additional questions or follow-up, please feel free to email me at jturner@mortonarb.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you soon.